Welcome back to Generator, my friends. This is episode 19, and I'm calling it Finding a Quiet Kind of Magic, because that's how my guest describes her wedding photography. Susan Stripling is a giant in the photography community, especially in wedding photography circles. You see, Susan is one of the world's most sought-after wedding photographers, having won literally countless awards, appeared in countless magazines, and representing some of the top brands in the industry. She's a Canon Explorer of Light and has taught thousands of students the intricacies of wedding photography. Susan and I met in 2019, and during COVID, we would keep each other sane by talking on the phone for hours. She even came up to visit here in Maine when she was on her way out to Acadia National Park last summer. She has an unreasonably deep love for horror films as well as Broadway, and I've been after her to appear here on Generator for a while now so that I could grill her on all of these things. In this conversation, we're a little all over the place. We talk about her selling the wedding school, we talk about using AI, the importance of self-care, as well as her top horror picks. But of course, no conversation would be complete without getting her thoughts on the future of the wedding industry. These are the types of conversations that I love to have because they're random and real and natural. So sit back and get ready to listen to my friend and my guest, Susan Stripling. I saw your new website. It looks amazing.
Isn't it beautiful?
It really is. Tell me about it. Tell me about the process. Like you've wanted to update it for a really long time. I know that you were going through a firm there. Are they Brooklyn based?
They're actually based in Las Vegas, which I did not know because it's like, website designers can live anywhere. It doesn't matter. Right. But after I started following them on Instagram, I was like, wait, they live in Vegas. They're young, amazing, much cooler than I'll ever be. And I loved my website. Like I had the same website on the same platform for forever. It was like killing it in SEO, but I was really limited with what I could do with the aesthetics. And after a while, I needed a more, I hate the term high end, but a more high end aesthetic. So the company I hired, they're called Inkpot Creative. And I hired them because my friend Justin hired them. And Justin's personal Instagram handle is Justin Hates Most Things. And so if Justin liked them, I knew, right? Like I knew we were going to be good. But they were also hyper organized, which I really liked because website projects can take forever, but they do a 5-week turnaround of a complete design of a website. And they set you up with their like Notion backend so that everything it all has a due date. You know exactly what they need from you on what days. And I just followed the to-dos one at a time. I rewrote all of the copy on my website. It's basically all I did for like 5 straight weeks. And it is gorgeous. And because I also hate most things, I figured we would get the very first draft. Now I'd be like, it's okay. Like it's close, but like there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done to it. And the first draft was it's basically what you see. Like we tweaked a couple of tiny things, but they just understood what I wanted it to feel like. And I love it. Like I still like, I feel like an old because I'm still learning how to do the back end. I'm like, how do you put in a picture? So I go back to the manual and I feel like I'm sending like, like when you're like programming your mom's VCR back in the day, right? Like, I feel like those are the types of emails I'm sending to them. Because their answers are like, well, it's actually quite simple. Nothing dates you like trying to learn new technology.
Oh God, when I was in IT years and years and years ago, we would send, the RTFM read the fucking manual to people. And I always kind of laughed about it, because I'm smarter than everybody. And then those projects started happening. And I had my website redone probably, God, it was 3 years ago. So beginning of 2020. And I went through a very similar type of outfit. Mm-hmm. They were based in Europe. And the problem was I knew more than they did. And I don't say that with ego, but I'm going through this and they're developing it on WordPress, and I've been using WordPress forever. And I'm like, I don't really think you should be doing it that way, but I'm going to trust you because I'm paying you, and I'm going to let you do your thing as the experts and just trust you. And at the end, it just wound up being me having to just write a check and saying, you know what, I'm going to finish this. I'm just going to finish this all. I appreciate all the holes in my stomach because of this. Thank you. So it sounds like on my next go round, I'm going through Inkpot.
They were honestly like, I cannot say enough good things about them on all different levels. And I apologize publicly for every email that I send them now, which is like, how do I make the font italic? And it's just like, I can't believe I'm now the person asking these questions. But you know what?
It does look gorgeous. It does look gorgeous. I was going through it today, and I just wanted to see it because I had forgotten that you had said you updated the website, and I went back and I was like, oh, this is the new stuff. And it's gorgeous. The best thing about it, besides the pictures, obviously, and just reading about you in general, what amazed me was how personal you made it and conversational, right? So as I was reading it as if I were a bride or a groom. And I felt like I was having that conversation, meaning I could hear your voice. It wasn't Chat GPT copy. It wasn't, just real formulaic stuff. I'm going to take the best wedding pictures you've ever seen. You infused it with so much of your personality that the aesthetic, sure, it looks great, but reading it is a masterclass in relating to clients.
Yay. Okay, good. I did it.
Yeah, it was really, really well done.
I mean, I think my boyfriend can attest. It's literally all I did, thought about, talked about for like 5 straight weeks, to the point where the copy could have all been word salad. Right. I have no idea. I looked at it so much, but it really was nice. It's, your work evolves over the years. Your brand message evolves over the years. And sometimes it just needs a new home to live in. I look at it now and I'm like, hee, that's mine. It's so pretty.
It was so great because I'm looking at it and I didn't realize, like, I knew you've been shooting a long time. But as I started to read through the history and your background, which we don't have to go through your whole background, I didn't realize 2001 is when you started. I thought it was later than that. I thought it was after 2010, and you just crushed from, like for 10 years. But you've been shooting a lot longer than that. 1,000 weddings, Gucci, Maine. You shot Gucci, Maine.
And literally the funniest part about that is I had absolutely no idea who he was. No idea whatsoever. The wedding coordinator, called, and I had been referred by the videographer for the wedding. And so she calls me and she's like telling me the whole deal about the wedding and where it is, and it's a celebrity and what they want in terms of contract and whatnot. And at some point I was like, you have to tell me, like, I have to know who it is because I have to send a contract to a person, right? Like, even if we're going through their lawyer or whatever. And she's like, okay, it's Gucci, Maine. And I'm sitting at my computer and I was like, who is Gucci, Maine? I had no idea. Like, it was so out of my frame of pop culture knowledge. I was like, is this Broadway? It is not. So yeah, I knew no one at that wedding at all. And like my kids were texting me and they're like, is Lil Yachty at the wedding? And I was like, what is a Lil Yachty? I don't even know. Is this a person? Is it a thing? Like, I don't know. But it ended up being really fun. And he was like super nice. And his wife is super nice. And it was just a wedding, really.
Do you find and I'm assuming that wasn't a budget, let's go to the VFW and rent the hall type of wedding. It was probably a little bit above that. Do you find that in the higher budget weddings that they are easier or harder to deal with? I know because you have, like, I'm not a wedding photographer, right? So I'm the last person to talk about weddings, right? Which is why I'm going to ask you really ignorant questions about the wedding industry. So when you're starting out, a lot of times there are some bridezillas. And you're trying to find your way. Then you kind of hit your groove, maybe 5-8 years in, and you're really humming along. And then you get to a point where you're above that and you're sought out for what you do. And you start getting into higher profile weddings and what I've seen this with several of my friends, right? And that's how the career goes.
Yeah.
Where you're dealing with high budget weddings, do you find the coordinators, and I'm not going to throw you under a bus here, but do you find the coordinators are easier to deal with on the bigger weddings or harder? Does the experience that you have, is that commensurate with their experience? And do you find everybody just working as a cool team, or is it just all over the place and you just have to thread that needle through the day?
It's all over the place. Like I sit down and I think like, okay, well, the weddings that like have bigger budgets, are the clients easier? Are they harder? Yes, no. Some of my most difficult clients have been lower packages. Like they've spent less than very expensive clients, but I haven't really been able to draw a line between when my job gets easier and when it doesn't. I can say that there are a handful of coordinators that I work with that do bring lovely budget weddings. And they bring a good atmosphere to the table. So working with them is like, you can just kind of like trust fall into the day.
Sure.
And it's going to work. Like they're going to manage all the vendors and it's going to be a cohesive team. But honestly, sometimes it just goes off the rails no matter what people try to do.
Well, that's really kind of what I was getting at. It has very little to do with the amount that's spent or what you're hired for. It has very little to do with that.
Yep.
Just in terms of experience level, I figured that if there are people with a little bit of expendable income, that they'd be hiring, top tier folks all across the board. And I was just curious if you ever looked back and you got to this point where you were just kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of working with the Hall of Justice here with like, the videographer and the officiant and the band, like we all kind of circle around each other and it's cool. Having really never been in that world, I'm sure it's a roll of the dice every time.
It's funny because where I'm at right now, I'm trying to push myself to like the next tier of money making, like the next tier of I don't want to say clientele because it's not judging the people I'm working with, but the next budget level in terms of packages. And every time I do that, like every time I make the next leap, I'm like, okay, it's going to get easier. Like the team, the day, it's all just going to get tighter. And what I've learned, if anything, throughout all of this time is that I have no idea what's going on. No one has any idea what's going on. Like a perfectly planned day could go completely off the rails and a badly planned day could go beautifully. Like there really is no, if any photographer has reached the point where they're like, I have made it and all of my weddings are now very easy. I would love to know what they've done because it's just part of why it's fun is you never really know what you're going to get into. And part of why I'm exhausted at the end of wedding season is because you never really know what you're going to get into. But it does get easier when there is a planner on the team that is, and I like an event planner, like someone who's been with the clients from the beginning, full service planner, who's helped with timeline, who's helped coordinate vendors, instead of someone who just kind of comes in for month of, day of, week of planning. What I do find, if I'm going to find like the easiest wedding to do, it is going to be with someone who has full service whole way through planning, because part of what they do as they're planning and coordinating is helping put together a team. And that's putting together vendors who work super cohesively together, which just makes things easier. The last thing in the world I would ever want to do for a living is like month of, day of planning, because you're running in, it's like building a house 9/10 of the way and then having somebody come in and go, just finish it.
Right.
And you're like, you hired insane people. Like, what is going on? But it's that sad. I've never had one go so far off the rails that it couldn't be pulled back. So,
and that's the common theme that I hear from everybody that shoots weddings is they come home with that 1,000-yard stare, a little bit of shell shock, but they're like, I'll still do it next week. I'll do it next year. I'll keep doing it. Right. And there's this weird dynamic between the love-hate relationship with shooting weddings. Everybody knows it's probably the most grueling, but it's also gives you the most experience in every sort of condition ever. And I know that the wedding school is, now under Emerald, but was that the reason that you wanted to get into education, was to start a school like that and eventually sell it off? Were you trying to just teach people what you knew? How did the wedding school come about amidst all of that?
Amidst everything. Well, most people's kind of speaking trajectory goes that, you stumble into somebody somewhere asked you to give a talk for something.
Sure.
And my very first talk that was not like to our local camera guild, I went to Jacksonville, Florida, and I talked to the camera club, at the diner. It was called the Tiny Diney. And I am not joking. I gave a presentation at the Tiny Diney on shooting destination weddings in Florida. And this was in like 2004. And then like you go from there to speaking at like, slightly more regional, and then maybe like a WPPI, a Portrait Masters, like you kind of get asked to speak a little bit higher up. And then people start asking like, do you give workshops? And I was like, yeah, I can give workshops. That would be fun, because there's really only so much you can impart in like a 90-minute class, an hour-long class, that sort of thing. So I started doing like small group workshops, and that was fun. But then Creative Live kind of came along, and they had me come teach for them. And I just loved everything about that teaching format. I thought it was fantastic, because we could teach direct to camera, but we could also film me doing things. And I'm like, this is great, because now people can, like, if they need their off-camera flash lesson, they can just roll back and watch it again. And then that kind of went on, and I was like, but all of this education that I've done is owned by another company, which again is absolutely fine. My Creative Live years I loved them so much. Like it was such a special bubble of time. Craig Swanson, who is one of the owners and like founders of Creative Live, started getting into working with other educators, and he and I kind of conceived of the wedding school of like, well, what if instead of one-off classes over here, I just put everything under here? And that's when I started thinking like, I don't know how long I want to educate at the pace that I'm educating right now, because I was teaching a lot and I was also shooting a lot. And I thought, well, if I could build something that our industry finds valuable and helpful, once that is a package, I could hopefully sell that package. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of educators are like, oh my God, I would never sell my education. I would never sell out, which is like the funniest thing I've ever heard, because like I'll sell out all day. I have no problem selling out, because I like money and would like to retire one day. And I built this beautiful thing, and I built it to the point that I wanted to build it, and then I didn't want to build it anymore. I wanted to hand it off to somebody else. So I did.
Coming from Cisco, doing mergers and acquisitions for over a decade, that was the thing that I found with all of the different founders and the CEOs of these small companies, is that very few, I did 60 some odd deals. I'd say 55 of those, they were built to eventually sell. Yeah. Now, those executives were also of the mindset, hey, if it doesn't, that's okay. I still have my exit plan. Absolutely. I'm going to put 5 or 8 years into this and then see where it goes. Right. A lot of those guys were churning them over in 2 and 3 years. I love the fact that you had an end goal in sight. Yeah. Right. That didn't include that there was an exit plan, that you were like, I want to retire at some point. I originally built Stone Tree to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. The emotional attachment to it. I know you just said like, you had always envisioned packaging this and selling it off. Mm-hmm. How did it feel when you did? Did you feel a weight lift? Did you scream? Yes. Did you cry? Did you laugh? All the things?
It's funny. It took forever to sell it. Like it took, oh my gosh, Matt, this was like it took probably about 18 months to get the whole thing done, because there had been another potential buyer before that. And that didn't work out. And then the sales started to happen through Emerald, and then it just takes forever, right? Like you've got legal, and then they have their legal, and then I have my legal, and then you have accountants talking to accountants, and then we're going to have the same conversation again, just with different people. And it was my first real foray into corporate America that taught me that I don't want to work in corporate America. I mean, it took a long time. I feel like that gave me time to be done. Yeah. So that when it was done, I was just like, okay, we're good. And I am very sentimental about a lot of things, but also very pragmatic at the same time. Mm-hmm. That I did build something. I built it to sell it. It is a capsule of the education of all of my knowledge of those years and those times, but that's over. Right. Like, and now I'm doing different things and I'm learning different things. And it's just, sometimes doors really do need to go. That's a horrible phrase about doors closed.
No, it's not.
Open. I mean, but it's true. I built this thing. I gave it a big hug. I sent it out into the world, and I just kept going.
I find that I'm certainly very nostalgic and probably hold on to things a little bit longer than I should. Emotionally, physically, hold on to things longer than I should. It's always curious to me when I switch the brain and I go into the pragmatic mode.
Yeah.
and I look around and I can detach myself emotionally, decision making is so much easier for me.
It really is.
When I can just remove that emotion, because what I've been doing lately is saying to myself, all right, if you were giving you advice, what would you say?
Yes.
If you were giving you advice, you'd say, drop her, go here, sell that, move, get rid of this, whatever it might be.
Yep.
It is very easy from the outside to look in and say, oh, it must be easy, right there on paper. Just sign here, it's done. Now, when you finish that phase, that season of life, and you start to move forward creatively, I've seen you explode over the past 3 years, right? Since COVID, since we've really started talking in 2019, thereabouts, I've seen you explode creatively with prints from your walks in a cemetery, right? And flowers, and you're speaking differently, and I'm seeing you teach a little bit differently. What are you doing? Are you just exploring, having fun, trying to figure it out? Or do you have another end goal in mind? Where are you at with that?
What's funny is that I didn't really realize what I was doing until I started reading this. So for the first time, I've invested in like my own education this year. So, and in the education I'm doing, there was like a list of like books that are really good to read. And so one of them is like oh God, I can't even remember what it's called. It's the Elizabeth Gilbert book about creativity, Big Magic. I think that's what it's called, something like that. And one of the things she talks about is just like, stop creating with an end goal in mind. Just make it. Will it be stupid? Probably. Who cares? Just do it anyhow. And there was a big, like in 2020, like I was living in Brooklyn. It was a horrible place to live during a pandemic. We were like shut up in an apartment building. It was awful. And I just kind of thought, who cares? Like, I'm just going to try doing this thing, and I'm going to try cooking, and I'm going to buy more houseplants, and I'm going to be weirder. And who cares? Like, I had somebody in my life for a really long time that was always like, you have to be super professional. Like everything has to be professional. You can't let people in, like fourth wall. But over time, I'm just like, why would I do that? It doesn't matter. And if someone thinks I'm weird and they don't want to listen to me, that's okay. And if someone thinks I'm too soft now and too Taylor Swift fangirl now or too whatever, that's okay. I just kind of stopped caring and started trying everything. Well, when my kids went to college, I just got more dogs. That's a therapy session in itself. I'm only 45 and my kids don't live at home anymore. So why not try stuff? Why not let people see you're soft? I also fell in love and I got all gross. Like I am disgusting now. Like I'm squishy. It's vile. It's kind of like the F it, why not?
I'm going to disagree with you on all those points. However, I did see you, like I saw you doing things that I never would have associated you with. I saw you painting. And I saw you doing things, getting into real estate development and interior design. And we'll
renovating a whole building.
Renovating a whole building. I saw you just having fun. And the interesting thing you said in there was about the fourth wall and what people think of you. It's been a really interesting thing to watch with the rise of TikTok, with the rise of social media. I'd say over the past 3 or 4 years, that this fourth wall has fallen apart. And the access to celebrity, and yes, I will refer to you as a celebrity in this point, the access to celebrity has become so easy to interact, right? You used to have to write a letter. Well, Mr. Cary Grant, I really loved you, and I would like to someday meet you. Now I can slide into your DMs and be like, yo, what's up? You want to talk wedding stuff? I think the access has made everybody rethink how we interact online. And I'm sure there's someone listening right now going, oh, the boomer gets it. He gets it. I think
great. Like I'm 45, whatever. You can make fun of me for being the boomer that gets it. I'm not going to act like I'm 22. I'm not. Like
all I'm saying was like me, the boomer. I get it. I finally understand social media now, and I'm the same way. Like I am. You're not going to catch me dancing. You're not going to catch me lip syncing. But I will be open and vulnerable, and I will show you parts of my life that I probably feel a little bit weird and squishy sharing. But you know what? It's me. Take it or leave it. We got a couple of hours on this planet. Let's make the best of them.
If you think my Instagram stories show too much of my cat or I talk about Taylor Swift too much, don't look at it. Makes me
with
happy.
that, what's your favorite type of stuff to create? Is it painting? Is it, breeding plants? Like, what's your favorite thing
I
to
kind
be
of can't figure
creating
out
right
what
now?
I'm doing right now. Like I don't want to say I'm having
Mm,
like a midlife crisis, but like after 2020, when you try all kinds of new things, because we were all at home and we had
yeah,
nothing else to do, what do I want to try now? Because I've renovated my home. It's gorgeous.
right.
I've got my dogs. I found my partner. Like I don't feel like some of that felt a little bit like flailing.
Mm,
I don't I don't know what I want to do right now. So I'm trying to like sit in my not knowing,
mhm.
which is a horrible, horrible thing to like get an ADHD perfectionist and try to just like sit with where they are right now. But I don't want to start new big projects. And I want to learn how to be a little bit easier. So, oh God, this maybe sounds so ridiculous. I'm on like a wellness journey right now, apparently, of like, I finally joined a really good gym and I'm working with a trainer and I'm working on what I'm eating. And like, one of the big things with the education that I'm doing now is the teacher I'm sort of working with, she talks about all of the things you need to do to keep a business going, and one of it is sustainability. And by
Yeah,
sustainability, she means your body and your well-being.
yeah.
So, like in the down season, I'm lifting weights and cooking beef stew and apparently walking on a treadmill desk now, which is a thing I
Oh,
do.
you got one.
Dude, oh my God. I don't It's such a simple thing.
Mhm,
You just throw a treadmill under a desk and walk at a grandpa pace
mhm,
while you're working. And then the next thing you know, you've been walking for 2 hours
mhm,
and you've done like 10,000 steps
mhm,
and you feel great. But my goal this winter is to take care of myself and to try to keep my brain open
mhm.
and see what comes in. Part of me is like, pick a hobby, ADHD, pick a
Right,
hobby, do a
right, right,
thing.
right.
We should make jewelry. Let's do pottery again. Like, so I'm trying to go the opposite of that and just learning how to be calm and enjoy just being calm and see where that goes. So, yeah.
You know, you had this quote on your website, and I'm going to read it. It's a quiet kind of magic, being able to pluck a fleeting moment from the grasp of obscurity and place it on paper, holding it for all time. I'm going to cut off the place it on paper, holding it for all time. And it sounds like you've been trying to create this quiet kind of magic. You're finding these fleeting moments. You're taking them from obscurity and you're nurturing these things in your own life, and you're building and you're creating. And without that end goal in mind,
Yeah.
putting it on paper,
Yeah.
you're able to just let things be. Do you find that that has opened up new doors for you overall? Do you find yourself more calm? Do you find yourself yearning for what you had and want to be that busy again? Or are you just really relishing the present and just saying, you know what, I need to take care of me. This is what I'm doing at this point. The rest of the stuff will come when I'm ready for it.
Honestly, I'm just trying to be right
Yeah.
now because I feel like so much of my life was a mom within a year of graduating from college. Like I have
Mhm.
spent my whole life building things, raising things, whether it's people or a business that I sold or a business that I still run or a life in Brooklyn. And now having my kids out of the house has been an even bigger what the hell does all of this even mean than I
Yeah.
thought it would be. I like to know things. I like data. I like facts. Like I like to be able to prove things. It's funny that I didn't have like my who am I now crisis when when my youngest went to college. It took like a year to really hit me. And I just have this frantic desire right now to be like, I am a person who likes these things, who does these things, who lives this way. And I'm
Mhm.
like, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna like put down hard facts just so we have facts.
Right.
Let's just try to let it figure itself out organically by like working on my business. Like
Mhm.
just let's just let things unfold,
Mhm.
which for me is like water torture. Like it
Mhm.
is so hard. I just want to know. I guess I'm in like the figuring it out season. There's a whole lot of I don't know.
Right.
Like what is next? I don't know. What am I going to do this winter?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can tell you I'm going to be working out a lot and Just so part of this, I keep talking about this big magic book because it's what I've been reading. She talks a lot about like how ideas wander around until they find homes. And if like the idea comes to you and it knocks on your head and you're not ready for it, it goes and like finds somebody else who'll let it in the door. And so my goal right now is to just keep all the doors open and try to like keep my brain open for ideas without forcing them. And I'm in the phase of that right now, which is very, very, very hard because I don't know how to sit down and calm down in any way that hasn't been dictated by a global pandemic.
Carlos Santana had, I will butcher the quote, but I'll give you the gist of it.
Go for it.
I heard an interview with Carlos Santana years ago, and he was talking along the same lines where he's like, someone had asked him, how do you improvise and how do you, create the music that you create? And he's like, the music is already out there. Yeah. I just channel it through me. And if I don't, it'll find somebody else and it'll go through them. Yeah. And he's like, I want to bring as much of it to the world as I can. And it sounds like you found this luxurious freedom in allowing that to happen to your ADHD, methodical brain.
Yeah.
I know that I struggle with it a lot. It's got to feel simultaneously exciting and freeing and terrifying all at the same time.
It sucks. Yeah. But it's like sitting down and doing this education where it starts with like, some of it is very education 101, where it's like, figure out the why of your business. And these are things I did a long time ago, but I'm doing them again. And it just feels like something in my life is slowly turning over, but I don't know what it is. So I'm trying really hard to just trust the process.
Sure.
Which is, it's terrible. It like sucks. I want to know what the process is and when we're going to get there and what it's going to look like. And I want to know right now, because you also have practical concerns. Like, will the process make me some money? Could the process bring me a few more wedding bookings for next year? Like, we got to pay the rent. Like it's, got to pay the mortgage here. Often joke that it's like a midlife crisis, but I don't think it is. It feels more like an unfolding into what's next. But I am the least gently unfolding person ever. So we're gonna need it out. It's gonna get there. So, and I am getting better at saying I don't know. When people are like, well, what's next for you? I'm like, I don't know. And that has to feel good instead of like, oh my God, I don't know, which is really scary.
That anxious I don't know is way different than the wonderful expectation of the unknown, of saying, no, I know I have no idea what's coming. And that's the exciting part. Like, it's going to be awesome no matter what it is. That's a really nice place to get to. I know that I think I was there once. Right now, not necessarily there, but I think from what I see of you from afar, it looks like you're exploring all these things, and it's really cool. I mean, I saw you this past summer. You're in a van. You're traveling around.
I know, I love it.
You're renovating a building. Like, you really do. You seem to have stepped back on a day-to-day basis from what you're known for, and you're exploring all these other bits, and that's got to be just a really cool feeling. So, what's your go-to to kind of step back and recenter?
On a day-to-day basis, like, I have a nighttime routine, and I know it sounds cheesy, but it's like the greatest thing in the entire world, which involves eating frozen green grapes in a bath and then reading a book for as long as I can until I fall asleep. And that kind of like, we'll go, which part are you making that face about? The frozen?
No, I'm just like, this sounds wonderful. Tell me more. I have a bathtub and grapes and books. Talk to me about this.
So, but you have to freeze green grapes, not red grapes, because otherwise it's weird. But I like to freeze green grapes and then put them in a bowl. And like, I have one of those like bath caddies that sits on top of the bath.
Me too.
Oh yeah. When we renovated, when I saw like your place, your bathroom was gorgeous. But the big deal, like when I renovated this, I was like, I want my shower and I want my tub in the same room. I want them to be like, it's like a wet room. So I could step from one to the other.
100%.
It's the best thing ever. Highly recommend. 10 stars. I just run a really hot bath with a lot of Epsom salts, put frozen green grapes in a bowl. I have these electric candles that I turn on. I turn all the lights off. And I get in the bath with my book and I just read for forever. And it's just like being in white noise. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. So it like sets me up for sleep. That said, sometimes it just doesn't do it. And I do get really twitchy if I've been in one place for too long. So I do like going places. Like the van is one of the best investments I've ever made. So like when Bill has this wedding in Florida, we're not going to fly to it. We're going to drive to it.
That's great.
And knowing that I have the ability to just be like, we're just going to take off for a couple of days and go somewhere. We don't have to find a hotel. We don't have to, figure any of this out. We can just get in the van and go, figure it out when we get there. Pro tip, you can sleep in a Cracker Barrel parking lot for free. No one cares. It's a big Cracker Barrel thing. You can car camp or van camp or take your RV to a Cracker Barrel parking lot. It has van parking because they know you're coming in the morning for pancakes. So yeah, as long as you go where there's a Cracker Barrel, you can go anywhere. But I'm still getting used to I keep coming back to the whole kids being out of the house thing. I'm just still getting used to the idea of we can just pick up and go somewhere. And I don't have to arrange the girls need to be with their dad or okay, they're here and then I'm going to a wedding and then I'm doing this. It's just a whole completely different mindset. So yeah, the van is having a little traveling apartment and we can go wherever we want. So next year we're planning on road tripping out to WPPI again, taking a month, just going out west again and seeing where that takes us.
I was thinking I love being on the road, right? I love just driving and being on the road.
Me
from
too.
My former life, I would rather drive than fly.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. I don't mind doing 12, 15, 17-hour stretches at a time. I fall into the hypnosis of the road.
Zone. Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. I listen to music. I think, I meditate. I listen to audiobooks, whatever it is, call people, get caught up, have a good time on the phone, whatever it is. I just find that I'm at home.
Yep.
All that pressure off my chest and my shoulders just goes away because I'm out here. There's nothing I can do. So I was actually thinking about if I go to WPPI this year, do I drive out? And take some time. Now,
why not?
Your van is far newer by about 2 decades than my truck. So driving the 3,000 miles and that might not be worth it, but doesn't mean I can't rent something. So you've got your apartment on the road. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the renovation. Now, we haven't talked about last time I talked to you about the renovation. I know we talked this summer. And you said it was going really, really well.
Done, yeah.
When we first started talking about it, you were getting into it with your friends. You were buying this building. There was this angst and nervousness about what the actual am I doing? And
this was a bananas decision. This was an absolutely bananas decision.
In hindsight, it was. What are you thinking now?
I think it's awesome. Yeah. So for anyone who has no idea what I did, I lived in Brooklyn since 2007, I think. And once the girls were in college, I was like, why in the world am I spending all of this money to live somewhere that I don't even like that much? So I sold my apartment in Brooklyn and bought a building in Baltimore with my friends. And I say my friends, both of them are my friends. They're married to each other.
Right.
So we actually bought this building a year before I moved in. During the pandemic, when we all thought we were going to die, we would just sit around and look at Zillow and it was like, I would rather die in this beautiful home that I can't afford, this beautiful home that I can't. You would look at, and it's like a New Yorker's pastime anyhow. It's just looking at real estate. Somehow Jane had mentioned that she wanted to move back to Baltimore because she was from the area and they were living in the suburbs and they wanted to move to the city. I don't even know how we started looking at Baltimore real estate. But we found this building it's like an art gallery / studio with an owner's residence on the bottom floor and then an owner's residence on the top floor and then a back apartment that could be rented out or used for guest space. And we use it for guest space. The catch was that the downstairs unit was perfect and ready for moving in. And the upstairs unit looked like 1992 had thrown up and died in the apartment. We're talking... They managed to have both drop and popcorn ceilings, multiple different types of carpet. This wall behind me, they plastered over it. It was a travesty. But we knew that if we bought it and we went in on the renovation together, I had a year that I wasn't going to be living here. So we could literally rip the whole thing down to nothing and start over again.
Right.
And so that's what happened is for my daughter's senior year of high school, I was living in Brooklyn, but traveling back to Baltimore to watch this renovation take place, which we thought would take X amount of months and X amount of dollars. And 3 times both of those things later, I've been here now for a year and a half, like officially moved out, sold the Brooklyn place, live here. And this is the most beautiful place I've ever lived. Like, I can't believe that it looks like this. I can't believe it's done. The final step was finishing like a roof deck so that I had outside space. And that was done earlier this summer. I officially, like, I live out here full time, but my business and my studio are still back in New York, which seems crazy, but it's only like 2 hours and 45 minutes door to door from here to my studio door, which is not that bad. It could take me the same amount of time to get from here to Manhattan as it took me to get from Brooklyn to Manhattan on a bad day. So I just go back for weddings. And otherwise I live here. My cost of living is so much lower and I live in this weird building and we're still kind of figuring out what we're doing with downstairs. We use it partly as an art gallery. We have a little store that we open on like neighborhood First Fridays.
Sure.
But figuring out what we really want to do with it long term, like does it stay an art gallery? Does it become like a peer space sort of rental? Kind of still sorting that one out. We own the building together. It's the biggest friendship commitment I've ever made is we have to be friends for at least 28 more years. The weird thing you think when you're like little and you're like, I'm going to grow up and like live in a house with my best friends. I kind of do that.
You did it. Yeah. You can either go the cult route or like what you did. And
hey, listen, I said, I don't know. Cult route could be next. We're not sure.
we might still be building this commune. You never know.
Hey, listen. We're letting all the ideas come in. We're just going to see where it all goes. Guys, the dogs don't think I should start a cult. They all just started barking.
Now that you live in Baltimore.
Yes.
How's your connection to Broadway? Because you were a Broadway freak, dancer, musical lover, right? So do you miss that connection? You still going back a lot? Has that affected your love of Broadway at all? No.
I still go. And it's funny because and I'm sure anyone who lives in any big city can attest, like you do less of the things that are in your city when you live in your city.
Oh, sure.
Like I never, ever went to the Statue of Liberty and I lived in New York for how long? And it's always like when it's there and you can go whenever you want, you never go.
Sure.
So I still see stuff. I still go back to see stuff. There's nothing that I'm really super like thrilled about right now. There are definitely things that I still love the city for. And I can appreciate a little bit better now that I don't live there. But I'm kind of handing Broadway over to my daughter, my oldest, who just did her first Broadway show contract, working on a lighting design team to get a show up and running. And she's done with that contract now. So she's now fielding the question of, so what are you going to do next?
Right.
Which is the perpetual freelance life question. I didn't move all the way across the country. I can still go back for anything I want to go back for. And I can go back with better appreciation. Life feels more open. The air feels cleaner.
I don't know. It's Baltimore. So
I mean, there was a puddle of blood on the street around the corner yesterday morning when we walked the dogs, but there wasn't a visible crime scene. So it's fine.
You don't know what species it was. So don't get bent out of shit. Could have been anything.
Absolutely.
Speaking of homes.
Yes.
I've got my home here, which you've seen.
I have
several more plants since you've left.
Good.
They're on the slow euthanasia path where they look at me sadly. I water them. I talk to them. I try to take care of them best I can. But every plant I have in the house is on hospice care.
I was going to say, so you're a hospice facility.
I am a hospice facilitator for vegetables.
Nice.
Where should I go? What should I buy? Should I just get a fake ficus at like the Christmas tree shops and put that in the corner? Or do I go the succulent route? Talk to me, Susan Stripling.
No. Just get a bunch of pothos. That's literally all you need.
I have 2 of them.
And how are you killing them? How are they dying?
You live in Maine in the winter. Everything wants to die.
Fair enough. They're unaliving themselves on purpose. But everything you need to know about plants, just follow Hilton Carter on Instagram.
Hilton Carter. Okay, I'm literally writing that down.
He is, first of all, the coolest dude ever, and I've learned everything I know about plants from him.
Are you speaking at WPPI this year? Are you out there? You are.
I think yes. Apparently, yes, I am. Yes.
So I do want to come out and see you because last time you were there teaching, I had a blast, and you were doing the thing you had your fingernails on.
I did. The self-portrait one.
And that was really, really cool. And that's what got me thinking about your creative journey. Is there any topic that you thought of, or is this like the keynote that you write in the van on your way out there?
I have a platform class that's about using AI for your photography
Ooh.
business in like all ways, shapes, and forms, from editing to copywriting to all of
Yep.
that. And then they're doing kind of like a wedding summit, and I'm going to do a talk there. And I just sent in like a proposed topic for that, which was they asked me to live shoot. I was like, well, let me do the thing where I show like, and live shooting for wedding stuff is so hard because it's just so different.
Right.
But what I really like to show is like the variety of portraits that you can make with just one light.
Sure.
And how just one light, using it in a bunch of different ways, you can get a lot out of it. So that's probably what I'll end up doing if they approve that. If not, you didn't hear this and I have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm talking to Pratik tomorrow night.
Are you?
And we're going to talk all AI stuff. So thinking about, I know you have this relationship with Imagine AI.
Yes.
Like I've been using more and more AI in all of my workflow, little bits, pieces here and there, but even with the podcast here, using different AI tools to make my job easier. At first, I was very, very much against raising up these tools and allowing AI to grab hold. And then I realized I had this stupid little conversation with myself. I was just like, Photoshop has been artificial intelligence literally since the first time we ever used it. So why are we cracking eggs over this? There's really no reason for it.
Yeah.
What I've found is in my own particular workflow, there are bits and pieces that I use to save time.
Yep.
I find myself using AI in that respect, not to create, not to make things. I'm using it to replace the time, to give me more time to create. So I'm replacing the time that would take me away from creation and putting it more into ways that frees up time for me to do what I love to do.
Absolutely what I do. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not using it to make stuff that isn't there.
Right.
I'm right now, because who knows where it will take us in the future, but like if I can teach AI to edit like I edit, why would I be spending hours and hours and hours doing it myself?
Right.
When there's something that could do it for me that I taught to do it? Why would I spend forever cloning someone out of something in, my assistant softbox, out of something in a photo when I can just loop it with generative fill and have that do it? Like, I love using AI to make my life faster, easier, just more streamlined.
Sure.
I'm still not sure how I feel about using it to make things that aren't there. But I also have a job that is very heavily rooted in things that they have to be there. Like it's with portraits, I could absolutely see being, AI is a huge possibility.
Right.
But for weddings, there's so many, it's real moments, real people on a real day. There's less, let me take the building out that they got married in front of and put them in like Iceland instead. Like that's not quite as applicable.
There's a different intention behind it too, right? The intention of Susan shooting a wedding is to capture those moments on that day for those people.
Yep.
Screw the rest of the world, right? When you're creating things to put out there to gain attention and you're using AI to do it, the intention is different. Now you're just marketing. Now you're just advertising yourself. Unless you are a digital artist that uses that as your base and then you manipulate that into something else. It's such a hazy gray area, right? And I try not to have any level of absolutes because I hate absolutes. So tell me a little bit about plug Imagine AI a little bit. Just because I know you're all in on that tool. And you've told me without any audience, you're just gonna Imagine AI is the shit.
Without being melodramatic, has legitimately saved my life. Like, there are so many photographers like posting right now on their stories and whatnot where they're like, I'm drowning in editing. And I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah. Why? Why?
Like I'm done. I come home. I usually call the wedding within a day of shooting the wedding because me personally, if I let too many days go by, it takes me so long to call because my brain just starts forgetting things. And if I do it really quickly, I'm so much faster at it because I remember the day really well. But like 5 days go by and I'm like, was that the bride's mom? And I'm like, oh my God, you idiot. You were literally just there. But then once I've called, I send the images to Imagine. I usually go take a shower while they're uploading. And I come back and they're done.
That's amazing.
And I download the edits into Lightroom, and I still go through, I still look at every image, and I make little tweaks here and there, because sometimes, I'll make a decision with lighting and AI is like, I think this is where you're going with this, but sometimes you also go in this direction with this. So but I also then spend way more time than I used to on like playtime, like kind of masking backgrounds or cleaning things up a little bit more than I used to. But it has just there's no more tedious one at a time edits going on. It's just so instantaneous. And I trust it because I taught it. Like, it's not just let's send it to a bot that's kind of going to guess. It has crawled your Lightroom catalogs that you've sent it, and it knows in these situations you do these things, so we will replicate them. So I have even less human error than I've ever had before, because it's AI. It's a machine. It's probably going to take over my house one day, and that's actually fine as long as my workflow stays okay. But I did the most boring promo video for Imagine last year. It was actually hilarious, where they went and visited like Charmy, and there was like, tell me what you do now that you have so much more time with AI. And Charmy's like, I make meals, I spend time with my family, and they're like having a feast in the yard. And I was like, I sit on my sofa and I read a book. And I was like,
which probably appealed to a huge audience to hear just that. Like, I'd love to sit on the couch and read a book.
I don't do anything. They're like, what do you do with the time you got back from Imagine? And I was like, nothing. I don't do anything. I take naps and walk the dog. But it really has, like, anything that can remove the bulk of the busy work, like having QuickBooks auto import my transactions.
Right.
It's so much easier than sitting down with my bank statement once a month and manually typing things in. It just makes my life easier. Why wouldn't I harness that technology? Because now my brain is clearer. It is more interested in the work I'm doing because I'm not slogging through it. And it just gives me lifetime back, apparently, to just get more animals.
Like I was saying earlier, it gives you that freedom to create a little bit more. Let me play with these masks, right? Because I haven't spent 20 minutes on this one photo just trying to get it to look consistent with all the others. Now I can actually play with it and be a little bit more creative. And I think, you're so good at creating impact in the moment that you don't have to spend all your time in post-production doing this stuff. You're doing it in camera, essentially.
The post-production is minimal in all good ways, I like to think.
Which is the best part of AI for someone like you, I would imagine, because after weddings, you would spend all this time. Now that you've created everything in camera, you can come home and just have it. 90% of that work is done. You're still going to put your touches on it, but 90% of that work is done. That's gotta feel amazing, especially at this point, right? Where you're not just slogging it out every weekend.
And it's funny, like, when people are like, well, what can I do to make my workflow faster? Like, the first thing I say is, like, your work needs to be tighter.
Sure.
Because the better my images are when they come out of camera, the less I have to, I don't want to say fix, because it's not fixing, it's just manipulating, but the less I have to fuss with each one. If it's cropped the way I want, if it's, as close as exposure as possible, mostly I just spend my time generative filling my assistant who's holding a light out of stuff. Hang on, what are the dogs doing?
I hear the dogs in the background. They're shaking, and then there's booms. It sounds like it's a little bit of constant chaos, but you thrive within this chaos. Like it's this gorgeous dance that you're doing.
It's a mess. Sometimes there's yelling. Right now the cat is in cat jail because she's been really bad. But and now all of the dogs are looking at me like, what are you saying about me? It's funny because like, when it's chaotic, it's literally the worst thing. And I think, why have I done this to myself? But most of the time it's like, wow, I get to share my home with these creatures who are so funny and snuggly. And like, the best thing is, like, Bill took a picture of, I was having a sick day and I was like laying in bed and all of the animals were in the bed with me. The cat, all 3 dogs smushed right up next to me. And I was like, this is living. And then the
Dr. Doolittle.
And I was like, you can all move out.
You've got a birthday coming up in January.
Uh-huh.
So I understand.
I do.
You've never struck me as we're going to make this Susan's birthday month type of person. But beginning of the year, right? You've got a lot of things going on. It's before the season kicks off. I didn't know if you took the winter And especially around the beginning of the year to take a trip or go somewhere warm. I know you probably
I
won't
don't
be
like
north.
being warm, so that's, it's a perfect time of year for me. I don't like to be warm at all. We're talking about we're going to this Florida wedding, and it might be in the 80s, and I'm like, I'm going to die. So I don't book weddings now around Christmas, and we're just not doing New Year's Eve weddings anymore.
Sure.
I'm saying the phrase, I'm too old for this shit, but like, I can't do New Year's Eve weddings. I just want to see my parents. I just want to see the girls. I want to relax. January is sort of like, let's start planning our road trip to WPPI time, because last time we were gone for a whole month, and it was legitimately the coolest to just be able to take off. So we went down to my parents, dropped off the dogs. My parents live in Georgia, and then headed out from there. So I think January, February, honestly, my goal is to just try to be as reset and chill as possible for the year. I'm doing a lot of business reevaluating right now because the wedding market is so different. People book differently now. They book closer to their wedding dates. Like, the pandemic sort of shook up the market a little bit. I'm just trying to take the time to see where it is, where it's going. What am I going to do in January? I don't know. And I say that as a happy I don't know, because I don't know. We're also talking about maybe going to Bermuda, because we're trying to find somewhere we can go that's kind of tropical but not super hot. We realized that it's like in the 70s in January. So that might be my perfect.
Bermuda is beautiful.
You've been?
I've been down to Bermuda, Aruba, Turks and Caicos, St. Lucia, St. John's. I spent a lot of time down just because it's so easy to get to from the East Coast here, right?
Yeah.
So we used to go down quite a bit. We'd either go and spend a week, we'd fly down and spend time there, or we'd do the cruise and we'd bounce. We've only went on one cruise, and I'll never cruise again.
I don't think I'm a cruise type.
I'm not built for that. And I love it down there. Such an easy pace of living. There has to be an expectation. Like, I like to go down and be pampered at whatever resort. At the same time, I don't need all that. I could very easily rent a house and have just as good of a time.
Doing. Yeah, it's like Airbnb-ing a place for a week and just
having your own thing.
Well, and also there's something to be said for being away from home, where I don't have, I want to start a home project, or like I really should clean out the closet, or like something like that. I'd like to be away, because I guess if I have any creative itch at all, it's to, I started writing a little bit during the pandemic, and my brain keeps kind of like coming back to, I think you should maybe write some more, but that's about as far as it's gotten. So we'll see. I don't know.
The last question that I'll ask you that you can very much answer with, I don't know. Been in the game a while. You've seen the wedding industry up and down, sideways, this way, that, and the other. After COVID, you just said it got shook up a little bit. And I'm hearing the same thing, right? Where everything's been kind of turned on its head.
Yep.
Do you think that will normalize into the way it was? Do you think this is the, I hate saying new normal, or do you think it will kind of find its way somewhere in between?
Honestly, the correct answer is probably somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between, yeah.
But it's also, I don't know if it has anything to do with COVID. Like, it's, newer generations, different ideas about marriage, different ideas about weddings, different thoughts about what they want out of life. Like, the traditional wedding photography model might not continue working because things might look different. But I guess what I'm trying to tell myself with all of this, and this is really hard to do, is I don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I just have to keep my eyes open, analyze as many data points as I can, and try not to make any frantic business decisions based on any shifting sands that I feel, because I don't want to make a panic decision to change the type of way I do business only to have it 2 years from now stabilize or normalize, or the economy change. And then I'm like, I made a decision I don't like. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on out there. I know that bookings are strange. I know that most everyone I know is very quiet right now. Very, very quiet right now. Like, more quiet than they've ever been. Like, does my contact form work? Quiet. And I hear that from everyone who isn't lying. Honestly, like, some people are like, this is the best year I've ever had. And I'm like, you Instagrammed like 4 weddings this year. Like, how is this sure. But things are just weird. But the economy's weird, and everything's really expensive right now. And I don't know that I would want to spend a lot of money on a wedding right now. So I can't fault how people's, and also that whole thing people are talking about like, are we going to have a lost year or a lost couple of years where like nobody was really dating in 2020? So like, are we going to have a wedding gap? Like, what does that look like? I just know that like back in 08 and 09, with the economy, everything shook up the wedding industry again. I was just like, I'm just going to stay the course and see what happens. And then I will make adjustments based on the data points that I can look at. That's all I can do right now is just keep saying, I don't know, but keeping my eyes open. Like you can say, I don't know, but you're really just like, I don't know. I've got blinders on. I don't want to know. What it comes down to is it's really just freelance life. It's always going to be a bunch of, I don't know. And like, we never get tenure and nobody gets job security and I don't get a pension. There's just always going to be so many questions, but hopefully being okay with not knowing. I don't know.
From what I've heard this entire hour has been, you're very comfortable with that. I don't know now. Maybe 25-year-old Susan wasn't necessarily as comfortable.
She would have had an aneurysm.
Would have had an aneurysm completely, just blown a gasket. But it sounds like all this work that you've been putting into just staying present and accepting the unknown is really calming. I'm noticing now, I don't know if it's, this wonderful relationship that you're in, if it's just coming to a better place with yourself. But from all of our conversations, again, it has become very obvious that you are much calmer, much more in control of yourself, much more serene and content. And it's an awesome thing to see you stay in that place, even when you're saying, I don't know where it's going to be.
Oh, and I have panic days. And like, Bill and I have like our weekly freak out about business and like everybody does, but therapy, meds.
Sure.
But like realizing that like, I think if 2020 taught me anything is that like, at the end of the day, you only have so much control.
Right.
And I can either learn to live okay with that, or I can let it eat me alive. And we're going to try to learn to live okay with that. If not, I'll just get another cat. I don't know.
There's always a solution to every problem. Thank you, Susan, for giving me all your time. I know on a cold night like this, you'd rather be buried in blankets with all the animals.
But instead, we're going to get takeout Thai food and watch Top Chef. Yeah, so if people think that like in the off season, I'm like watching high fine art movies, dude, we were like watching Top Chef and TV shows about how to build tiny houses. And I'm reading junk murder mysteries and it's like the best.
All right. And speaking of which, we never even got to talk about horror films. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Top three horror films that you've ever seen. Knock them out.
Top 3 horror films. Number 1, it's called Pie Wacket. It will scare the crap out of you. Pye, Pie Wacket. Very freaky. Scares the shit out of me. Number 2, it's called The Witch in the Window. What hand gesture did I just make that made balloons fly behind my head in this?
I have no idea. I've never seen that.
I just moved my arms around and all these balloons flew up behind me.
So Pie Wacket.
Witch in the Window, Hereditary. An honorable mention is Midsummer, which is like my comfort horror film that I like to fall asleep watching. Because nothing's really more soothing than, burning your boyfriend in a bear carcass.
You got to do what you got to do.
Pie Wacket is really freaky. It's
never heard of that.
It's very it didn't get a huge release, very small movie, but there's just something about it that rubbed me really the wrong way. And everyone I've showed it to, it stressed them out because it's my favorite type of horror, which is you don't see the bad guy and it doesn't end happy.
It's a magic formula.
It's true. Like the second, I would put Smile on like my top list, but they show you the bad guy at the end. And the second you see the bad guy, you're like, that is stupid. And it is not scary.
That's the worst thing you want when you're in a state of fear is to be like, well, this is stupid. Because it just takes you out of the whole story.
You're scared of. I can be not scared of that. But if you just don't show it to me, it's like, also on my list is It Follows. Someone you might not even be able to see is just following you around to kill you. Like that is,
that's New York, really, is all that is.
That's really, the latest Scream movie that was set in New York when like Ghostface is like on the subway, I'm like, this would never work. Like the New Yorkers would have just beat the crap out of him. It would have been over in like 2 seconds. He would have been trying to like rob the bodega and everyone would have been like, get over yourself. But yeah, if Pie Wacket is the one that really, hang on, one more. Can I do one more?
Yeah.
It's called Lake Mungo. It's done as like a faux documentary. And faux documentaries are usually so cheesy. This one really does
It's not like found footage, like Blair Witch style. It's
No, it's
okay.
like it feels kind of like you're watching like a Dateline
Okay,
almost.
gotcha.
But there's something about it that just it gets under your skin so wrong. It's great. It's great. But if anyone really wants to see all of my 500 favorite horror movies, I have a Letterboxd account, so you can just look me up on Letterboxd, and I have a whole list rated by the ones that I like the best. Because listen, we had nothing to do in 2020, so that's what I did.
I love that you dropped that, because I really do want to go check that out.
I love horror movies because, like, my favorite horror director is Mike Flanagan. He did Haunting of Hill House, The Fall of the House of Usher, like the new Doctor Sleep. And his wife is in a lot of his movies. Her name is Kate Siegel. And if you follow her on TikTok or Instagram, she did this great monologue once about like why she likes acting in horror. And horror movies get a bad rap, but it's actually the truest and most genuine acting you will do, because it is your truest and most genuine base emotions of fear, of anxiety, that's a whole nother podcast of why I think horror movies are the greatest thing ever made.
I would love to. And that's not Katie Siegel, Peggy Bundy, Katie Siegel, is it?
No.
Okay, all right, totally different.
Very different Kate Siegel.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you for all of this. And yeah, I will have you back. Why don't we do something in October-ish, and we can do your you can do your horror picks.
Oh my God, my friend Camila and I can do our horror movie fan club for you.
All right. So I'm going to see you at WPPI in a couple of months, and we'll have more conversation. We'll go to some overpriced restaurant and have tiny little donuts.
Bill just did a fist pump. The Stack little donuts over at, you remember the little donuts at Stack, the little baby ones? Okay.
All right. We're going back. This has been amazing. Thanks for giving me your time. I will, I'll see you soon in Vegas.
You better.
All right. Bye-bye.